Okay, so I will just talk about what to expect from the training. So it's going to be mostly role playing.
Hmm.
And that means just practicing some of the canvassing guides that we've developed, making sure that you feel confident with them and making sure you feel sort of confident enough talking to strangers. And then I'll explain, in addition to that, the different types of outreach that you can do, um, and how to kind of coordinate volunteer efforts on the ground. How does that sound?
Yeah, good. Mm.
Super duper. Okay. So obviously the election was called in a real rush,
Mm.
which means we've had to pull everything together incredibly quickly. However, what we have here is a huge opportunity. People are hungry for this kind of change, so I really think we should give it our best shot. Um, in terms of just a little proviso, I would say that if you're looking for practice, the only real way to get practice is by just heading out there and giving it a go. I'd encourage you to go out and do your outreach with at least another person, partly because it's nice to have a buddy, but also you can learn from each other and offer each other kind of constructive ways you can get better. I'll also say that if you think the guide that we've developed is rubbish, that's absolutely fine. Take the parts that you like and throw out the bits that you don't like so much. Um, they're really just designed as just a guide. Okay, so there's a couple of different types of outreach you can do. The first one, and I'll be putting these in the chat, is canvassing. So you aware of what canvassing is?
Yeah. Mm.
Super. Then we've got leafleting, and leafleting can be putting leaflets through people's letterboxes, but it can also be standing in busy places and handing out leaflets and talking to people. Then we've got stalls. So setting up a stall uh, with lots of materials about the campaign, leaflets and that, and having a chat with people on the street. And we recommend a certain type of stall, which I'll talk a little bit about later in the session, which is kind of designed to be a bit of fun, engage people in a conversation, that kind of thing. And then there's also putting up posters. So this can be going into shops, cafes, faith spaces, uh, putting up posters and having a little bit of a natter with the shopkeeper or the space owner. Okay. Now it's really important that at the end of every single conversation with a stranger you meet, to be offering them a concrete pathway to action. So we owe it to people to make it as easy as possible to take action on their beliefs. So that's why it's really important to offer a clear pathway to action. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's just a nice conversation. And what we're here to do, obviously, is get some votes. So the first pathway to action is to stay updated with the campaign. Now, this is for someone who is a bit lukewarm. You know, you're having a conversation with them, they're kind of a bit cold. So you might ask, well, do you want to stay updated with the campaign and uh, hear about its progress and also, stay in the loop afterwards? Because ultimately, what we're trying to do here is not just up to the election, it's also afterwards. It's about holding whoever does get elected to account if it's not our independence. The next one is pledging to vote. So if the person you're talking to sounds very, very keen on your candidate, you can be a bit cheeky and ask them if they'll consider pledging to vote on the 4th of July for your candidate. And this is a really good way to prime someone for making that leap on the 4th of July. Um, okay, the next one is to join you for a volunteering opportunity on a specific day and a specific time. So, if you're speaking to someone, you've had a great conversation, they're really enthusiastic about this way of doing politics, you can ask them uh, if they want to come along and join you for some outreach. So, it's really important when you do that that you are specific with the activity you want them to join you for. Because if you say, "Oh, do you want to sort of volunteer with us, or do you want to like help us out, or something like that?" It can often be a bit of an overwhelming ask to be asked on the spot because you don't really know exactly what being a volunteer involves, and how much time that will give. And people are afraid generally of committing to things that they don't really know what it involves, understandably. So, a good way to go around that is by just asking them if they would join for a specific activity. So, for instance, you can say, uh, Rosie, I hear, you seem really enthusiastic about this idea. A load of us are going out canvassing tomorrow between 12 and 2 p.m. So that's 2 hours. And we're going to meet outside the Rose and Crown pub just on the high street. And we'll go out and do our canvassing. Don't worry if you've never done it before. You can pair up with someone who's a bit more experienced and they can show you how it's done. And then we'll meet for a social afterwards. So something like that.
Mm.
Um, and the final penultimate pathway even is registering to vote. So it's always a good idea to ask people before the voter registration deadline, which is coming up on the 18th. Are you registered to vote? So you can direct them towards some resources to get them registered. And the final pathway is to come to an assembly. So, as part of your campaigns, you'll be organizing assemblies. So, it's a great idea. I think this is one of the most attractive asks is to say to someone, you've got great ideas. It would be fantastic if you can contribute your voice to the independent candidate's manifesto. So come along to our event. It's a specific date, specific time again. Okay, so those are the 5 pathways. Do you have any questions about those?
Um, no, they all seem self-explanatory.
Okay, super. And you'll note when we're going through the canvassing guide that they're all already woven into the script. So yeah, you can if you have the script in front of you, then you'll be automatically reading out these pathways as they come along, and they're integrated into hopefully in a kind of a natural way into the script. Um, there's some resources here about voter registration, just in case people are quizzing you about stuff. Um, obviously, uh, we don't have the time to be manually registering voters on their behalf. So the best we can do really is to direct them towards a place where they can register to vote and try and make it as easy for them as possible. Um, okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit now about um, how to organize outreach. Um, and you may already have a system for this already, but I just want to share a spreadsheet in the chat, which I've found helpful working on other campaigns. What it is, and I'll share my screen as well. what it is a spreadsheet that looks just like this. It's got all the dates on here, and it's a way to coordinate all of the outreach that's happening. So, for instance, you could plan all your canvassing times that you're going out to do this outreach. Um, you can ask people to sign up to kind of host those activities, so they would be a coordinator in this case. Um, and then you can ask people to sign up if they're interested in this column. So if you've got a WhatsApp group for volunteers, what you can do is pre-populate this with lots of different activities that they can get involved with, and then share this in the volunteer group and say, hey guys, I've just listed a load of activities. Are you able to come and join for these? Just sign up in the yellow box. And then what you can also do is the day before an activity is about to happen. So we've got this example here, canvassing 2 till 5 p.m. On Larry Street. So what you can do is you can just share that the day before in the WhatsApp chat and say, hi guys, just a reminder, tomorrow we're going out canvassing on Larry Street from 2 till 5 p.m. Here's the person's contact number. They're the person organizing. So if you can't find where it is or whatever, just give them a call. And people can sign up that way. Do you have any questions about that?
So where do I get a blank one of those then?
Right, good question. So you go up here, file, make a copy.
So can I do that now? Or
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so I put in the chat a link to that spreadsheet, so you can do that now if you like.
yeah, can I do it now? Because I'm not very techie and I don't know how to keep that link after
Of
this
course.
thing's over.
Yeah, I'll just pause the
Um,
recording and we
Thank
can do
you.
that now.
Mhm.
Um, so what you can do um, is when you meet people on the day at the meeting point, um, it's a good idea to just go through the canvassing script with people who maybe don't have much practice, they're feeling a bit nervous. Obviously, you've been to this training, so you know how to work it. So you can maybe do a role play with another one of the people who turn up to do some canvassing, and you can also uh, split people up. If you have more than two volunteers, you can put the people who are maybe a bit more nervous along with people like yourself who are more confident. Um, so um, the next thing we're going to do is just go through the canvassing sheet, the canvassing guide. So I'll share it in the chat, but I'm also going to share my screen so we can just read through it. And unfortunately, there's no one else in the room, so you're going to have to do this with me if you're okay to do that.
No, give it a go.
Fantastic. All right, I'll share my screen. Um, and don't worry, first time around, I will be the person canvassing. And if you could be someone on the doorstep,
Could you make it a bit bigger?
yeah. Uh, how is that?
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, fantastic. All righty, so I'm going to pretend to knock on your door in a minute. And if you could answer, then we can start the conversation.
Okay.
Hiya, my name's Lachlan and I live just down the road. I'm a volunteer on this local community campaign for the election where hundreds of members of the community are having their say on what they want from their MP. Can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Great. So how long have you lived here?
About 3 years.
Okay. And how have you noticed it's changed in that time?
I don't see that it's changed very much in the time that I've been here. I think this place is kind of pretty solidly the same, and there's
Okay.
positives to that and there's negatives to that.
Okay, interesting. And where did you live before this?
Brighton for a little while, but I've lived most of my life in London before that.
Okay. So how does this area compare to Brighton, for instance?
Um, Brighton was well, I think people do call it London by the sea.
Right.
So moving from London to Brighton did not feel like that much of a um, difference in a way.
Okay.
Um, whereas coming to Tunbridge Wells felt like I was really moving into a different political landscape, and not one that I'm comfortable with. It's hence I'm on the move again.
Right. Okay. So people kind of seeing the world in a bit of a different way in Tunbridge compared to
Yeah.
Brighton, London. Okay. And what do you love about the area? What makes it really special?
I live just opposite the Common, which is a really, really lovely green space, and it's got these sandstone rocks in it, and it's just a really lovely open green space where you hear the birds and you see lots of wildflowers, and that is, I live just opposite that, so I'm very lucky in that regard.
Wow, fantastic. So you got fresh air and nice smells
Yeah, yeah,
and nice sounds as well. It sounds by the
yeah.
sound of things. And on the flip side, what are the difficult things for you about living in the area?
Um, it's a very it's a quite affluent area, and I think that people are quite comfortable in that affluence. And affluence, that sounds like the wrong word, but um, I don't feel like there's much looking outwards to the rest of the world. It's a bit kind of, I'm all right, Jack. Let's not worry about anything else because this is a beautiful place to live, and I'm okay. So
Right.
there's quite a lot of that. I haven't really, although I have been involved in certain groups like Palestine Support Campaign and XR, but they're not particularly locally based. So
Right. I
I
hear
tend
you.
to go, well, I go up to London a lot for those kind of things.
Okay, so you have to go outside of the area to find people with similar kind of views to yourself.
Yeah,
Right. And can I ask what concerns you about the wider world?
I'm appalled at what's happening in Gaza, and I'm appalled that all of the major parties in this country have failed to call for a ceasefire
Hmm.
and are not addressing the fact that we are contributing to the arming of Israel to kill innocent civilians.
Hmm.
So I'm absolutely appalled by that. I'm appalled by the Labour Party reneging on every green policy that it had formerly supported. And I honestly can't see any difference between voting Conservative, Lib Dem, or Labour, and hence
Hmm.
I won't be voting for any of them.
Yeah, I hear you. It is. I'm hearing the kind of distress in your voice, and I feel very similarly. I think it's appalling the situation in Gaza and also with the climate. So I do understand you there. And for you, what should this community be like for your kids and future generations?
That's slightly challenging for me to um, answer because I don't intend to stay in this community, but
Right.
I think this community is a rich one in so many ways, and I think it needs to think about how that richness is distributed.
Hmm.
Um, as I say, I'm looking to move away, so I'm not really in a position to probably influence that very much. It's a very safe place to live. I mean, there's some people who complain about a few kids um, having some beers on the common. The people
Hmm.
in there, Nick is really in a twist about that. I think it's the safest place I've ever lived. um, so um, yeah, I think it's the sharing of that wealth.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
no community housing here. There's no council housing. There's, you know,
Right.
if you are in any way um, looking for social housing, you just can't get any here. You're moved out. It's appalling in some
Mm.
that's that this rich. Um, the council committed to having a climate assembly in 2019. Um, and that is in the minutes of council meetings. And then they decided that they didn't really need to have one because they knew what needed to be done.
Hmm.
And there was no process. And I did get quite involved in this with the leader of the council to say, so you made this declaration in 2019, you've
Hmm.
changed your mind about it with no democratic process
Hmm.
to gone through to say, well, yeah, we said we'd do that in 2019, but actually we know what we need to do, so we don't need to ask people.
Hmm.
I mean, I thought that was outrageous. Um, and some other people thought it was outrageous, but a lot of people went, yeah, that's all right. So I think the state of democracy in here is around here is pretty low, really.
Hmm.
People just cast a vote and then let people get on with it, apart from, the usual kind of things, complaining about the bins and those kind of things, which is always going to happen. And it is irritating when your bins don't get collected. But I just don't feel that there's, oh God, I don't think I'm doing this as a role play, am I? I'm just being me. Sorry about that.
That's absolutely great. No, it's fantastic and it's real.
I think there's
So,
many people like me around here who do get this response from, though.
oh,
Oh,
that's okay.
I'll stop there.
I'll just ask you a few more questions if I could. Do you feel you can influence decisions made about the area?
No, when I first moved here, um, I did get involved um, around the citizens' assemblies, and I felt that the councillors just did not want the involvement of people. It was an irritation to them. It wasn't a potential resource or something they were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was part of a climate assembly in Brighton and Hove. It wasn't perfect, but at least there was a sense from the councillors there that they were interested in having that process. Whereas in Tunbridge Wells, it was just seen as a bit of a cheek, really, because they knew what needed to be done.
Right. Okay. So I'm hearing there's not loads of citizen engagement and people feel
No,
locked out. Okay.
no.
Well, listen, I think your ideas for the community are really, really great. And I'm hearing that you feel a bit powerless, that things kind of aren't going right. Have I got that right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, I mean, basically this candidate has come forward, Hassan has come forward, and he's had this idea to organize community gatherings with lots of people in the area to find out what they actually want. Then in those gatherings, we all come up with a shopping list of things, and he's going to try and win the election to make them happen. The good thing is that he's an independent, so he's not told what to do by any political party. That's why he's the community's candidate. So the next gathering is on Thursday, the 21st, and it's starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 8:30 p.m. And it's at Longridge Community Centre just down the road. So, children, pets, friends, and families, everyone's welcome. So, are you free at this time to come along?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay. I mean, if I could just take your details so I can let you know when the event is happening and invite you formally, uh, that would be great. So let's start with your name.
Rosie Sauvage.
Fantastic. Dot, dot, dot. We'll do email, phone. Dot, dot. Thank you. That's brilliant. And Rosie, can I ask you, have you registered to vote yet?
Yeah, I have postal vote because the voting station's a little bit of a distance away, so I always do postal votes.
Gotcha. Fantastic that you're registered. And I'm gonna ask you straight up, people who are gonna vote for the community candidate on the 4th of July are pledging to vote on the doorstep. So can I count you in?
Oh, if I didn't know Hassan, I'd be saying no, I'm going to come and hear what he's got to say first. But I do know Hassan, so yes, you can count me in.
Okay, so we'll just say, for instance, that you are going to come to the assembly and hear
Yeah.
more. Okay, that's super. We'll leave it there, Rosie. Thank you very much for being an excellent actor. So there's some additional steps you can take after the script, and this is if people are really enthusiastic and they're into the idea. So, for example, you can say, people have told us they find it super inspiring to see others taking the step for change. So, can I put a photo of you on our social media for a bit of fun?
Yep.
Or will you come out and chat with the community with me tomorrow at this time, this day? Or can you help out with bite-sized tasks for the campaign? Or
Hmm.
do you know anyone else who I should speak to? Could you introduce me? Or I'm just going to go and speak to your neighbor. Do you want to come as well? So these are kind of stretch ambitions,
Yeah.
uh, and it's absolutely, if someone's really up for it, then keep on going, and you can do
Mm.
multiple of these at once. Okay, so um, what I'm going to do is pause the recording so that we can do some uh, role play together.
Okay.
Okay, super. So here are some top tips from community organizers, and I've just popped those in the chat. So tip one is try to remember that this isn't a conversation. This is a conversation, not a survey. So where possible, try to avoid reading off a clipboard or your phone or something like that. Tip two is to hold an imbalanced conversation. This means that the other person is doing about 80% of the talking. Tip three is to make sure that you always finish with one of the pathways to action. Otherwise, it's really just a nice chat. Tip four is to try not to stay for more than 15 minutes. Otherwise, you're not really being so efficient with your time. Obviously need to remember you need to get around as many doors as possible and have as many conversations. So you can balance that with having good conversations with speedy ones. And tip five is to show understanding and empathy by summarizing what someone has said back to them. So it's very personally validating when someone summarizes what you just told them in their own words. Okay. So there are a couple of different types of outreach. As I said, we've just gone through canvassing. So there's also holding stalls, and there is also putting up posters in shops and cafes, etc. And there is also going leafleting. Um, what I can say is that this canvassing guide, which we've just been practicing, you can pick this up and take it to other forms of outreach as well. So, for instance, if you're going leafleting, you can follow sort of um, a similar sort of pattern of the conversations. Opening with a question like, "Oh, how long have you lived in the area?" And having a good chat with someone, and then pivoting towards one of the pathways to action as well. So this kind of guide is not really just for canvassing. It can be applied to lots of different types of outreach as well. So there is also um, quite a fun thing you can do with stalls. And I will um, pull up a picture of one of these stalls. And while I find it, I'm just going to pause the recording actually. Okay, so when you're doing your stalls, there is a really fun and engaging way to um, to go out and have conversations with people, and that is to hold a potato stall. So it's pretty straightforward. All you need is a kind of board, bit of cardboard or whatever, and if you write at the top of it, what's more use to you? And as you can see, we've got a picture of Keir Starmer, picture of Rishi Sunak, and a picture of a potato in the middle. So, unsurprisingly, the potato every single time wins the votes by some margin. And obviously, this is a really great way to just get people to think that, politics maybe isn't working if a potato is getting all of the votes. Um, but most of all, it's just a bit of fun to start a conversation with someone. And occasionally, you might get people who will take it seriously and um, kind of not not fully connect with the message behind it, and that's absolutely fine. Those aren't necessarily the people who would consider um, going for an independent candidate that's like we're trying to do. What they did in this case, it was in Totnes, I believe. They left the voting board out overnight, so it kind of turned into a public work of art. And you can see people have kind of like used like been really creative, drawn some pictures around the potato, kind of making it look all beautiful. There's some stuff in there which is obviously quite crude, but the point is it's really engaging people, and you can see they've put out some flyers uh, to get people informed by the event as well. Okay, so that is more or less everything. So I think what I'm going to do at this point is just stop the recording and I can take some of your questions.